Differences between men and women in a blessedly short, you know my belief, folks. People should say what they have to say in about 200 pages. And Professor Dr. Marianne Legato pretty much does that in Why Men Never Remember and Women Never Forget. She is a professor of clinical medicine, not to be confused with a clinical professor of medicine at Columbia University. All right, so all these differences that you describe, let me read the chapters here. Men and women are different, true or false. May I have this dance? What attracts us to one another and how we fall in love? Let's give me the three biggest differences between men and women in a nutshell.
Well, I think that
you mentioned the brain
that you read between a man and a woman points out some of the most important differences. Mm-hmm. When a woman has an unpleasant experience, especially around the issues of a relationship, estrogen lights up a wide field of neurons in her brain that help her record every detail of the quarrel between them or the incident. The unpleasantness of the experience prompts the secretion of a stress hormone called cortisol from her adrenal glands that raise her blood pressure and speed up her heart rate and even help her retain salt and water so that she increases her volume of blood that she's pumping. This effect lasts for almost 24 hours and results in her feeling anxious and depressed as time goes on, as she records and relives and goes over and over the details of this disagreement. A man, on the other hand, gets a bump in cortisol that lasts about an hour, sufficient essentially only to make him feel upbeat and pretty terrific, and which is just the opposite of how she's feeling.
Wait, he feels terrific after a quarrel?
He feels terrific. He has a little burst of cortisol that lifts his spirits, makes him feel more energetic, and he's on to the next thing. He does not create that tremendously detailed memory of the argument, and he is definitely on to the next thing. It's a much simpler incident for him.
But wait. That one is hard for me to relate to. He actually feels better after a quarrel, you're saying?
Yes, he does. Once it's over, he thinks it's solved. He's finished with it. The stress of the moment.
Oh, not because of the quarrel.
No. But the stress of the quarrel prompts a almost compensatory release of cortisone from his adrenal gland. But unlike the case with his female counterpart, that bump up in cortisol lasts for about an hour and then fades away, and it leaves him feeling upbeat and ready for the game.
Are you familiar with a study that I have cited often, and I think it's the University of Wisconsin, and for all I know, the whole thing, it didn't even happen. But I believe that I read of a study that they took college students, female, college students, male, would put a male alone in a room for a few hours, female alone. They did this with a number of them, and then just asked them, what did you think about?
No, I'm not familiar with that. What were the answers?
All right, well, here, the answers I love, and that's why I think you'll love it too. The men said sex and sports, mm-hmm. and the women, and everybody yawned at that. That was no revelation mm-hmm. to anybody. Mm-hmm. The fascinating thing for me was what they said the women did, reviewed conversations.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, and I think that's because we form these very detailed memories. Relationships are very, very important, and I think that Charles Darwin would point out, as do many, that the pressures of evolution selected out women who were able to concentrate on and nourish relationships in their family units. To do that, they had to be very sensitive to language, tone of language, and in pre-lingual babies, they had to be able to decode expressions and tone of cry. All of that detail was very important in maintaining the health, safety, and happiness of their offspring. So women were selected out, if you will, for maintaining relationships in great detail and for concentrating on that and making it sort of a focal point of their development. Men, on the other hand, operated for millions of years, quite literally, outside the home largely, and their efforts were to procure food, and usually at a cost of risk and danger, right? So we find that testosterone, which is the predominant hormone in the pre-senescent or young man, actually mutes the experience of pain, which I find interesting, helps people find their way through three-dimensional space without making mistakes, and, interestingly enough, diminishes the ability to remember unpleasant experiences, so that men will take bigger risks, volunteer for things like going to Iraq to war, becoming firemen, going out to sea to fish, and uncomplainingly take risks that women think 30 times before assuming. Their memory of unpleasant experiences is much less vivid and fades very quickly. And as you can see, all of this helps if your great mission is to go out and face a sometimes hostile environment and bring home not only protection but nourishment for your family unit.
It doesn't only help for that, though. I think it's also going to help for the relationship, because if we men dwelled on these things as much as you women, nobody would move forward.
Well, that's the beauty of living together. The brain is not fixed in stone, and there's no question that we can learn. And in so doing, we actually change the anatomy and chemistry of the brain, which is why the long process of the talking cure, known as psychoanalysis, works for people. Certainly chemicals can bring you to a point quickly, but the talking cure, just like all other experiences, does change the function of the brain, hopefully for the better if it's done well.
By the way, do you defend Freud on campus?
Oh, yes, all the time.
You are gutsy.
All the time.
Wow.
He'll come back and defend.
I mean, it's easier to defend Mussolini.
But the point is, we can learn from each other. And the wonderful thing about men is to detoxify, if you will, the anxiety and depression over what really is a minor incident. The husband in that quarrel did not love his little girl. He was told to put on a clean dress and get her ready to go to his in-laws.
And teaching the girl not to worry about dirt.
Exactly.
Whereas if the girl got all the fears from mom, she'd be paralyzed.
Very well put. Very well put.
That's what it's funny, because I was just talking about that issue on my show about all the anxieties that are now induced in kids today. And one of the reasons is the dominance of females in the lives of kids today.
That's interesting.
They never see a man.
That's interesting. You mean in the matriarchal societies?
Yeah, well, no, not just matriarchal, although that's a term possibly to be used, but just simple fact. They don't see men other than their father, and many don't even see him much, even if the family's intact.
Which is an interesting argument for sending boys to school where their teachers are males.
That's exactly right. That was exactly the point I was making when I said that. It's not. We need females as much as males in their lives, but we don't have any males.
That's a very interesting comment.
Well, it's a credit to you that you actually would say that, because it means you're really open. You're open to data.
The whole subject of whether or not girls and boys should be schooled together by the same kinds of teachers is a very interesting one.
That's right.
I think there are good data to show that the pace of development and indeed the intrinsic talents of little girls and boys are different. Girls speak before boys. They're more responsive to the spoken word than boys are. They have bigger vocabularies, and they definitely have play preferences which are not, in spite of the popular dogma, are not determined by the environment. I'll tell you a very cute story.
Yes, I want to hear it. You're good. The book is Why Men Never Remember and Women Never Forget. Dennis Prager Show.